Welcome to Lake St. Clair and the Lake St. Clair Fishing Show.
Dan Kimmel, GreatLakesBass.com, here with you on the second big opening weekend of the Lake St. Clair 2013 season. This is the fourth Saturday in June. That means it's the Ontario opening weekend. The big day is June 22nd, when we're going to have the Monster Quest 8. That's the big tournament of this weekend. You can fish the entire lake for the first time this year. They are doing something a little different, launching out of 9 Mile Ramp and working with the city of St. Clair Shores, something I like to see happen. There is another tournament this weekend, a minor tournament. The Michigan Bass Anglers Bass Club, they're having their youth club tournament on Lake St. Clair out of Harley-Ensign on Sunday, June 23rd. Youth club anglers interested in youth fishing, you might want to check out michiganbassanglers.net for more information on their youth club. Once again, you have the Thursday Cash for Bass tournament out of Harley-Ensign, and I just found out from Wayne that Mark Hill and Mike McGrain are starting the NBA Tuesday night tournaments back up. So Tuesday the 25th, also at Harley-Ensign from 6 to 9, there'll be an NBA night tournament. This past weekend was a Michigan opener. We had two open tournaments on Saturday. The Cash for Bass St. Clair Open was out of Selfridge Ramp. They said they had 47 boats, and first place was Zuber and Zarnecki. Zarnecki's been around a long time, I know for sure, on Lake St. Clair. And they had 20 pounds 5 ounces to win. Skip Johnson, GreatLakesBass.com member, 19 pounds 12 for second. And third was Tuguska and Prisby, 19 pounds 11. At least 7 people had over 19 pounds, including Trombley, Mike Trombley, who also caught big bass at the event, a giant 6 pound 4 ounce smallmouth bass. The other tournament Saturday, well, of course, was the NBA St. Clair Open. That's been out there a number of years. They had a little bit higher winning weight. That was the always right there this time of year, Robodeck and Klauser team. They had 23 pounds 2 ounces. Pretty good size winning weight for a post-spawn tournament. And Robodeck had another 6 pound 4 ounce bass. That's interesting that both big bass of both tournaments were the same size. The rest of the weights were all those high 19s down in the 17s and 18s weights. They had 45 teams, so another decent show. So right now the weights are right about where they should be for this time of year before they start moving into the late post-spawn, pre-summer, summer, where the weights go up a little bit higher.
Well, we certainly have entered into the post-spawn period. One characteristic of the post-spawn period is the bass start to inhale the baits. They start to take them down too deep. When they take them down too deep, we don't want to pull the hook out and injure the fish. One thing we know for sure is that copper flake tends to be the flake color in the plastic that the bass tend to inhale a little more strongly than other flake colors. So one thing you can do is you can stay with the tube and you can change flake colors. Keep in mind that when you find post-spawn feeders, they're very aggressive. So changing flake color might not be a disadvantage at this time. Even though they're feeding strong on the copper, they'll feed strong on other colors as well. So change to a different flake color, and on the next few fish, you'll see right away that either you're getting the same bite, the same strong bite, and you'll see if they're not taking the tubes down as deep. That's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is change baits. If you're using a tube, go to a drop shot. Drop shot tubes work well too. They're up off the bottom and the bass may not inhale them as much. And if you're like me, I use an octopus circle hook on my drop shot, and that tends to hook the fish right in the lip. You can also move to jerk baits, spinner baits, crank baits. Also, these baits will be less likely for the bass to take them in. When you're out on the lake this weekend, you might want to think about moving around a lot. Is there a honey hole? Is there a spot that is going to work out where it's going to be loaded with fish? There probably is. Where you find it, it's a little bit like a needle in a haystack right now with the post-spawn bite. You can find that spot, you can catch those fish, but it might take a lot of pre-fishing time. So one strategy is to keep on the move, using crankbaits, even plastics, drifting strong drifts with plastics, covering wide areas instead of small spots. That's a good strategy in the post-spawn period.
For some reason, the bass this time of year tend to swallow your tubes a lot and other baits. I don't know why that is exactly. My theory is that because it's coming into mayfly time, that they're used to just gulping down as many of those as they can and swallowing them as fast as they can so they can eat a bunch of them, because they have to eat a bunch of them to get a lot of nutrition. What I suggest is you go to greatlakesbass.com/forum and search for Jeff Snyder hook or when fish swallow hooks. You'll find information that I saw a tip from Jeff Snyder years ago, Lake Erie smallmouth expert, on how to pull the line through the gill plate and turn the hook back around and just pull it right out clean without actually doing a lot of damage to the fish. Once you get used to it, you can do it pretty quick, and you can let a lot of fish go that in the past you might have killed or hurt to the point where they don't survive. That's a quick tip I wanted to give you for this time of year when they're doing that swallow. Based on the tournament weights from this past weekend and the fishing reports that are starting to come in, we are heading into post-spawn. But of course, I'm still hearing that there are areas with quite a few beds left on them, and I personally have seen bass on beds right up into the second or about the first or second week of July at some years. And with this being a cold year, it wouldn't surprise me that you can still find them if that's your kind of thing, sight fishing. But meanwhile, the post-spawn bite seems to be what a lot of people are targeting. We're heading into, of course, mayfly time, so you're seeing those typical reports. A lot of tube fishing. They're catching this year again. It's interesting, a mix of smallmouth with a small number of largemouth in the same general area. That's pretty common. GME Time 24, he says that they boated about 30 smallmouth in a few hours on the 15th and 3 or 4 largemouth bass, but they were getting a lot of smaller bass. That's pretty typical in the post-spawn. You start running into a lot of small bass while the bigger bass are recuperating. They're kind of bunched up and a little more scattered while they're moving out. We have really good water clarity right now on the mile roads and south of the mile roads. And then from the 400 Club up north is a lot of stained water to very stained. That's not too surprising after all that rain we had not too long ago. Of course, you can always count on our ever champion fishing report person, Rev Tro. And actually this time Mick Balla went out with Rev Tro, and he reported that they went out and 6 to 10 foot on the mile roads and boated some smallmouth bass 2 to 3 pound range. They were fishing the 6 to 10 foot, and that's pretty much typical of this time of year, that if you find a stretch, there's still probably some fish on bed, some fish probably still coming into bed, and you have some fish that are moving in and out. Probably just some fish that are feeding in the area, because that's where a lot of the fish are. Remember that only about a third or so of the bass spawn usually in any one year, so a lot of bass are actually just doing what they would normally do. Something you might want to know, the hot ticket right now seems to be the green pumpkin tube. That's kind of an interesting little tip too, because a lot of times this time of year I use lighter colored tubes. That was the hot tube for those 2 anglers that day, so that's something I wanted to share with you. And again, they did pick up a nice fish on a spinner bait, and I think that's something people want to keep track of this time of year as a backup.
So let's talk a little bit about forage on Lake St. Clair this week. There's some exciting things happening as far as the mayfly hatch is starting. We haven't seen a lot of that activity yet, but I saw the first one of the variety that I was looking for, which is the kind that bass feed on. They're a little cream color, they're a little juicy, and you'll see this one I saw at the Nautical Mile BP Tackle Shop at 9 Mile in Jefferson. Also, recently I caught a smallmouth. It was about a 2 pound smallmouth, but he coughed up this perch, which was about 5 inches long. And interestingly enough, this perch was still alive. So there's a couple interesting points about forage on Lake St. Clair for this week. Remember, when you're out there, keep your eye on the surface of the water, watch for disturbances, and cast anything that moves. Have a great weekend.
Since we're all about fishing strategy and safety here on Lake St. Clair Fishing Show, I want to make sure and remind you about greatlakesbass.com/weather. Has all the weather links you need. You can click on the Lake St. Clair U.S. Marine Forecast. Right now we're looking at Saturday and Sunday, southwest winds, 5 to 10 knots. That's not too bad. Means you probably can fish just about anywhere, but it's going to be real hot, and with light and variable winds you may get some showers and thunderstorms later, so make sure you're playing accordingly and stay. But that wind direction and the speed might give you a chance to figure out exactly where you want to concentrate your fishing effort for the most success this weekend. Make sure you get updates too. You don't want to just check once. So greatlakesbass.com/weather Every time you click that Lake St. Clair U.S. Marine forecast, you'll get an updated weather forecast from the National Weather Service. I hope that helps you have a safer fishing weekend. Here's an important tip from all of us here at Lake St. Clair Fishing Show. Since it is Canadian opening weekend, make sure that you're prepared to call 888-CAN-PASS when you cross the international border if you're going to fish in Canadian waters. That's 888-CAN-PASS. You'll talk to a border officer and they'll ask you a few questions, and you get a report number, and that number you keep with you all day to prove that you did do your calling in case you were checked or stopped. It's a $1,000 minimum fine, seizure of your vessel, so it's worth just making that call. You have to do it right after you cross the border, first thing at the start of your day. Now, you're going to want to make sure that you have an enhanced driver's license or a passport. And really everybody in the boat needs to have that kind of identification to verify their citizenship. One tip I recommend is I keep a certified copy of my birth certificate in a plastic baggie in the boat. And that's not a copy you make on your copy machine. You have to actually go to your county clerk and get them to give you a certified copy that actually has a stamp. It's pretty inexpensive to get 2 or 3 or 4 copies made. Keep them handy. That will also verify your citizenship.
Hey Monster Quest anglers, the Nautical Mile BP Tackle Shop is open at 5 a.m. just for you. If you need must-add jigs, Gamakatsu hooks, Power Pro line, or Extreme Bass tackle tubes, the tackle shop will be open for you with excellent parking for bass boats. Could it be any more convenient? It's at the corner of 9 Mile and Jefferson. Good luck to all, and be safe out there. See you this Saturday at 5 a.m.
Well, that's it for this week. Join us next week on Friday and every other Friday to the end of September, and we'll give you the latest news and bass fishing updates on Lake St. Clair. See you out there.